everyone. My project is going to involve looking at the health of one of my local waterways, and this project is done in cooperation with the LeafPack network. It involves getting a pack of leaves from the local area and putting them into a waterway, monitoring them over the course of several weeks, and then observing the health of that waterway based on the number and type of microinvertebrates that are found within the leaves at the end. And this information is reported to LeafPack. The waterway that I'm going to be observing is located in the Blackwater State Forest. Now this forest is very important for this area because it's home to the longleaf pine tree, and you can see there's just tons of them everywhere here. Now there used to be huge swaths of area in the southeast covered by the longleaf pine. However, its native range was invaded by a type of oak tree that wasn't indigenous to the area, and they started to choke out the longleaf pine. But rangers in this forest conduct controlled burns in order to get rid of some of the invasive species. And if you look at the trunk of the pine, you can actually see some of the residue from these controlled burns. And these allow the longleaf pine to survive here without being choked out by invasive species. This allows a lot of native fauna in the area to take refuge here because the longleaf pine is part of their native habitat. I've taken pains to ensure that I get leaves from the Blackwater State Forest itself so that my leaf pack that I use for the waterway is as natural and indigenous to this localized area as it could possibly be. Okay, now I have gathered my leaves. I have netting from some fruit that I got from the grocery store. It's in the house right now, soaking in warm water in order to make sure that it is clean and sterile for when I put it in the water. I have at least 3 types of leaves that I'm going to be putting in the leaf packs, and I believe that this is an oak leaf, and I think this is birch. And then of course, because the park is so important for the longleaf pine, and there are pine leaves just absolutely everywhere, I thought that some longleaf pine leaves would also be really good for the leaf pack. Today is February the 4th, 2023, and I will be putting out my leaf pack that I've made to this little creek here in Blackwater State Park. It's quite cold out today, so I imagine that the water will be pretty cold as well. Have my little label. Now I'm hoping I can use this stick as an anchor to keep it in the water. Whoops. And there we are, placed. Now, I'm going to take a couple of measurements for temperature, air temperature and water temperature. For that, I'm going to be using an infrared thermometer. I actually use this for my reptile enclosures, and it is really handy. Here it is. So I'm going to point it to the side just to try to see if I can get some of the ambient temperature. Oh, it's warmer than I thought. It's about 69, 70 degrees out. Doesn't feel that warm. And the water temperature is about 65, 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, we'll come back in a week to check it out. Alright, here we are for week 1 after the leaf pack has been sitting here in this waterway. Today's date is February the 11th, 2023. Weather feels pretty good, a bit like last week. And let's see, pack surprisingly still looks pretty good. So I'm just going to very quickly grab a couple of temperatures, and I'm not going to mess with it too much because I don't want to disturb anything that may be already living in the leaf packet. So let me get out my handy dandy infrared thermometer. It's a nice little creek. Alright. Oh, colder today. Ambient temperature is about 66 degrees. Water temperature. And now this is shining an infrared beam onto the water. Let's see. About 65 degrees Fahrenheit, I would say. So, pretty good, interesting stuff, and we'll be back next week. We're in week 2 of monitoring the situation with the LeafPack. It's still there, still looks pretty good. Temperature outside is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Water temperature is about 68, 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Today is February the 25th, week 3 of monitoring and checking up on the LeafPack. There it is. It's quite a bit warmer out today and more humid. Let's check temperature. The ambient temperature is reading approximately 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature of the water is looking to be about 69, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Right. And the next time we come back to check, we'll be collecting the LeafPack. Alright, and today is the day to go ahead and collect the LeafPack, so I'm going to do one final measurement of temperatures. The ambient temperature seems to be about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature of the water is approximately 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, so now I'm going to gather the LeafPack and collect it in some water to keep any microinvertebrates that are living in it alive, and then I will take it back to my house so that I can do some evaluations and give my final thoughts on the results and what they might mean for this waterway. Okay, I have now collected the LeafPack and I've sorted through it using stream water to maintain as much of a natural habitat as possible, and I've sifted through it in order to collect my macroinvertebrates. And within this sample, I managed to identify 4 macroinvertebrates. And what we have are mayflies, crayfish, a true bug, and very hard to see, but the little worm in there, that's fly larvae. What we are doing here by gathering these macroinvertebrates in order to study the health of a waterway is called biological monitoring. And what this means is that we're studying the biology of a stream in order to understand what kind of health is in the stream, any effects of possible pollution to the waterway. Aquatic macroinvertebrates like these are really good indicators of the quality of a waterway like a stream, because macroinvertebrates can't escape the impacts of any sort of chemical or physical change in the stream or waterway due to things like pollution. They can't escape the pollution, so if we gather a sample like this one and we see a very low variety of macroinvertebrates, that tells us that only the most pollution-resistant animals are able to survive in the stream, and that tells us that we have an issue of waterway health. Other things that we might see is that maybe there's an issue with the stream's food web. Now here we've only got 4 types of macroinvertebrates that I've been able to identify, and what this tells me is that there is a somewhat of a lack of biodiversity in this stream. Although there's not a complete lack, what we have here is a pretty good sample of wildlife. However, not as much as maybe anticipated, especially for things like true bugs or even fly larvae. We don't see a whole lot of that, and that tells me that maybe there's a food web issue with the stream, possibly some indicators of pollution, since we have some very pollution-hardy animals here, so maybe less hardy animals are not surviving in the stream. So, in conclusion, over the last 3 weeks, what I did was to place a leaf packet in one of my local waterways. Every week, I monitored the leaf packet to check to make sure that it was doing well, that it was staying in the stream. I also measured things like air and water temperature, and that was just to kind of get an idea of what sort of environment we could expect. So, a lot of macroinvertebrates, they don't want the water to be too warm, but we don't want it to be freezing either. And what I noticed with my weekly measurements is that the environment was just about right for the macroinvertebrates to start moving around, coming out of brumation or hibernation from the winter time. So I would have expected to see a really good gathering of macroinvertebrates in this project. Now that I've gathered them, I've evaluated what I found, and I've connected it to what that means for the health of the waterway that I chose for this project. What I will do now is report that information to the LeafPack network for them to add to their database. I'll also be returning these macroinvertebrates and all of the water and leaves and everything back to their environment, so no worries, they will go right back where I got them from, safe and sound. And that concludes my project for this class. I hope that it was beneficial and that you learned something. Thank you very much for your time.